for the 2020 presidential election, the Central Election Commission changed the normal solid ballot boxes that we have, like the plastic and acrylic boxes, to temporary cardboard boxes that were formerly only used for referendum questions. So nobody questioned the structure or the way the cardboard boxes were designed in the 2018 and 2016 election. These cardboard boxes have been around for a while, but we've never seen them replace the ballot box for presidential election and legislative election, which are the two most important elections going on presidential election day. So this was highly irregular, and when I saw that the ballot boxes had been swapped on election day, I immediately suspected that there was something going on. And of course, later on, we found out that the Taiwan's personal army went to locations, I believe, which were district offices, where they stuffed 3 ballot boxes per voting station, which was the presidential election, legislative election, and the party ballot election, which is for no district legislative primaries. No, it's not primaries. Okay, and so like these Taiwan's personal army stayed up till like around 4 a.m. doing this. So they were very tired, and they were sharing their feelings over Facebook. Of course, they were talking in code, but we managed to screen capture some of their chatter, which was like they were very proud of what they were doing, and they were saying that they were protecting Taiwan's democracy against China, and by not letting that snake Han Gori get into office. So they were doing something good for Taiwan. But were they really doing something good for Taiwan? I mean, this is open to debate if it's okay to rig a presidential election to keep a certain candidate out of office. But so since then, there's been a lot of discussion over these cardboard boxes, and the Central Election Commission has continued to use them whether they are cheating or not, right? So the truth is, you can still cheat without the cardboard box, but the cardboard box has a hole at the bottom, right? So when you squeeze the box like this, you can actually take ballots out of the box. So what they were doing on presidential election day is that they were mixing together the stuffed Taiwan ballots with the normally cast ballots, and then they were counting them like this. And then they were sorting ballots so they wouldn't count too many Han Gori ballots, and they would leave them at the bottom of the box. And then you can just grab them at the bottom. Like, let's say there's 200 left, you could just grab them at the bottom and put them into one of those like student desk drawers, so that people couldn't see. Or in some cases, they just take them right out of the box. So like you can still steal ballots if it's not a cardboard box, but if there is a cardboard box, you can steal them without people seeing it generally. So and also people have to check the ballot boxes at 8 a.m. to see if it's actually empty or not. This is the right of the voter. However, there's a flap, like because it's a cardboard box, there's a flap down there, so you can stuff like 200-300 ballots easily down there, and then it won't be that high, and then no one will see it, right? So now in Taiwan, you can't just look anymore. You have to like move. You have to like lift the ballot box and try to reach your hand underneath to see if there's ballots underneath there. But if you do that, you will get yelled at and possibly kicked out of the voting station. Like eventually, they will make that sort of thing illegal. Fortunately, they haven't tried that, like pre-stuffing the ballot box before the election since presidential election day. What they've done is that they've moved to stuffing during the day, which is like people with backpacks going into the voting stations and just like stuffing a certain amount. And this way, the election staff can verify how many ballots are actually being stuffed so that they can declare how many ballots were cast, right? Because on January 11th, 2020, they didn't know how many ballots were cast, right? They just like everyone skipped over that stuff because they weren't the ones who stuffed the ballot box. It was someone else. It was like a different group of people. It's like Taiwan's personal army. So, but anyway, there's been a lot of calls for transparent ballot boxes in Taiwan, and I wanted to get some points of view from Mike here about the history of transparent ballot boxes in France, right? Because, like, why isn't there a push for transparent ballot boxes? I see them being used in like Russian nations, right? So like, if Taiwan has supposedly had such a great democracy, how come the Central Election Commission has absolutely no interest in standardizing the ballot box so that the entire process is transparent? And instead, they want to give you solid ballot boxes that you can't see through, and they have a hole at the bottom, and then have like a secret compartment. It's like a magic box. So like, if we really want to prevent fraud, like, there needs to be a serious push for transparent ballot boxes with no hole at the bottom, of course, right? So, and the Central Election Commission has been pushed on this issue before, but they just deny that there's a compartment or there's a hole, even though, like, we've seen over and over again in the voting stations that this cardboard box can be broken down. So obviously there is a hole there, right? And we have video of the hole, right? So, like, but they just straight up lie. Like, when questioned, they just go, no, there's no compartment in there. Like, there is. You can see in their official design of this cardboard box that there is a compartment flap in there. So,
那这个纸票轨它并没有大家外界讲的说什么底下有夹层这些这个其实大家都可以去看这个票轨底部并没有夹层这是有关说纸票轨的这个部分
I don't know. It's like everything else in Taiwan. They just straight up lie about it, even though, so. But anyway, so I wanted to compare Taiwan to perhaps a more mature democracy in Western Europe. So, Mike, why don't you tell us the importance of transparent ballot boxes, at least in France?
Of course, it's very important. Well, thank you for having me first, Jason. So, as the word speaks for itself, transparent, right? So, why do we have transparent ballot boxes? It's because we want the elections to be transparent, right? So I think it goes together, right? So ballot boxes have been used for millenniums, actually. It goes back to ancient Greece, where they were using amphors, the wine things, made of clay.
Okay.
But it wasn't transparent because it was clay, right?
Right.
And stuffing goes back to that time, actually.
I don't know.
To ancient Greece, of course, because if you cannot see, if it's not transparent, it's more difficult to check for stuffing, right? It's less transparent, right? So, but actually, because, back then, they didn't have glass, it was more difficult, And today, you don't even have to use pure glass. You can use a mix, right, of like plastic, so it's cheaper. So we actually been using, it goes back to 1981, I think. Yes.
1981.
Yeah, so it's very recent, actually, or
40 years.
even a bit later, yeah.
Yeah.
So actually, we are the second nation to have been using transparent boxes. The first one was Spain, just 1 or 2 years before us. And I think so. They started with 4 sides, so it's a box, right? First, it was the sides on the side, but the top and bottom were wood. And just a year later, they made all 6 sides transparent, okay, for full transparency. And it makes sense, right? So then you have 2 keys. So maybe I can show the picture here. Okay. Yeah, so 2 keys, one for the head of the voting station and another one for an observer who is just a normal citizen. Although, if you want to be an observer, anybody can do it, but you have to be a member of a party. And, we have so many parties in France, so that's not really a problem. And your party has to, it has to be official, right? They have to sign you up for the day of the election. But
Okay.
it's super easy, okay? It's really not difficult. So here you can compare the ancient and the new boxes, okay? It's very interesting. And so on top, you can also have a counter here, okay? This. So with,
Counter.
yeah. So every time you put an envelope inside the box, it will say 1 plus 1 plus 1. You
But
understand?
how does that work? Like, how does it know that something's being put into the box?
Because when you pull the lever,
Oh, you have to pull the lever.
you have to pull the lever to open the ballot box. You understand?
Sounds very mechanical. Okay.
It is.
Yeah.
It is totally 100% mechanical.
Yeah.
So you pull the lever to open the box,
Okay.
put the envelope in, and the counter will say +1,
Wow.
+1 envelope. So it's impossible to cheat, right?
I'm sure we would find a way in Taiwan. I'm pretty smart here. You know?
With with all the observers in the room who belong to different parties, nobody wants to cheat.
Unfortunately, that doesn't work in Taiwan either because they just buy off the
whatever.
observers from the other parts. But yeah, I'm sure France is much better than France. Yeah.
I don't know Taiwan. I just know France.
Yeah. But that,
I can
that looks
tell
pretty
you,
cool, man.
in France, like, if because you are supposed to be a watchdog for democracy if you're in that room, right? So my party is so small. Okay, we will never win, but it's important to have small parties just to maintain democracy, right? You know, because
Yeah.
I don't want them to win, so I'm gonna be, to cheat, you know, and also to win. So I'm gonna be like, hey, what's going on here? You know, and I have the right to speak up.
That's pretty cool that you have a key. You know, that the observer has a key.
Yeah.
So you literally
Well,
can't
only
open
one,
the box.
only one.
You can't open the
No,
box.
you need the 2 boxes. Okay, so
You need the 2 keys for the box.
you need the 2 keys to open the box.
Okay.
So that's also to avoid cheating, right?
All right.
So here, this is the mechanism here. Okay, this is on top of the box. So you need to turn the 2 keys at the same time, and you see there's a line here that connects the 2.
Okay.
Okay.
Can you explain the putting the ballots inside an envelope? How does that work?
Yeah, okay. So you go to, it's a bit like America. You go to there's a curtain, like the individual tiny rooms, You close the curtain and then you go in the little room. It's not a room, it's like a changing room,
Okay.
You go inside and with 2 names minimum.
What do you mean? Nate?
Because the names of the candidates.
Oh, okay.
Because if you just take one name, everybody will know and will see. It's supposed to be secret, right?
Yeah.
In France, it's secret. Who you vote for is secret. You don't
Right.
have to tell anybody, even your family, right?
Yeah.
So it's to avoid conflict. So you take 2 names minimum, so people.
How do you take a
don't know.
name?
So you enter the room, and all the names of the candidates are on a table.
Wait, is it a piece of paper?
Yeah,
Or like...
it's a piece of paper.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So, and all the pieces of papers are printed in France, in Paris. They all have the same size, the same font.
Yeah.
Okay. So everything is regulated
Okay.
by Paris. Okay, by the central government. Everything is put on the table, same size, same everything. All the envelopes of the same size, the same color. They are also sent by Paris everywhere. So everything is standardized.
So you take two
2 names minimum.
names in, and then you put one inside the envelope,
Yes.
and then what do you do with the other one?
Put it in the bin, and the bin is emptied every 10 minutes.
Oh, I see. This is an interesting way of voting.
Yeah,
Because in the U.S. we used punch hole for many years,
yeah,
and it would create a situation where is this really punch? You know, there'd be like a piece of paper still hanging there.
Yeah.
And then in Taiwan we use ink still, which is like the oldest way of voting. What's your opinion of using ink?
I don't know. I don't know how it works.
Oh,
I'm not familiar.
You take the stamp and then you know put it in the ink pad and then you vote. But then the problem is like sometimes they play tricks with the voting stick where they like cut a corner and then it would become invalid. And there's also been eyewitness accounts of different kinds of ink pads being used, where like some would be permanent ink, which is what you're supposed to use, and other times it would be like disappearing ink. So we have there's some conspiracy talk of appearing ink and disappearing ink. But like I did a little research into like voting by ink, and the U.S. hasn't used that for over 100 years. But yet Taiwan is like dedicated.
The
to
thing
ink.
is, in Chinese culture, stamps are very important, right?
Yeah.
So that's the
Big
thing.
deal.
That's
Yeah.
the thing.
Yeah, but it's not secure because then it creates a question of like the standardization of the stick and the ink. Like so, like in one election in Kaohsiung, my friend served as election staff, and they were very paranoid about getting all the ink pads back. How many ink pads go out? That many ink pads have to come back to us, right? Because and then one was stolen and actually got out, and then it was tested, and the ink pad was in fact it was disappearing ink, right? So I personally don't understand how the whole process works. I'm not sure if I fully believe it, but what I'm saying is like that if that ink pad did come from a voting station, and what I mean by disappearing ink is that when you first stamp it, it's red, right? So there's actually an actual stamp there. But if you wait 2 hours, it actually disappears. So the Central Election Commission has been testing allegedly disappearing ink, but as far as I know, that's only happened in Kaohsiung, and I don't think they've tried it like nationwide, fortunately. So I'm not super worried about this whole disappearing ink thing. But what I'm saying is that like if there's room for fraud, like it's a problem whether they're doing it nationwide or not. Personally, I think it's a lot safer for them to just like stuff the ballots rather than steal the ballots. Because that's the only way you can be totally sure that it's going to work. Because this whole like ink thing, it gets kind of complicated, and election staff are not necessarily the brightest. So when you try that on like a larger scale, a lot of things can go wrong. Which is why I believe they've only tried it in Ballot. So, but yeah. So what you're saying is, so for a presidential envelope, they just put it. It's like a card. Like how thick is the paper?
No, it's very light because they also think about the environment.
Okay.
So
it's not like a piece of plat. It's not laminated or anything like that.
it's paper, very thin. It's very small, maybe like the size of a cell phone, and you have the name of the candidate. That's it.
Like
You can easily find pictures online.
yeah. I like the whole idea. Because it removes ink and punch hole, but then what would probably happen in Taiwan is that
But I think it's important. I understand the price issue, right? The money, the cost issue. But I mean,
I don't think it would cost that much more. I think it would be about the same. Actually.
I think democracy is priceless. This is what people should understand and accept and embrace. So if you have to pay a few dollars more to buy a transparent ballot box, you should do it. And actually, because
box, okay.
no, but even the
I was talking
paper,
about ballots.
even the ballots, right?
Yeah.
If you have to print,
You need more paper for
need
that
to do
because you don't know how people are going to vote.
and you can recycle the envelopes actually. Because I asked, what happens?
Yeah.
You can even recycle the paper
The
that
ballots.
was thrown away. Yeah, the ballots. You can recycle that. You can recycle paper. It's super easy.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can recycle everything. And actually, so about the ballot boxes, if they're made of glass, you can keep them forever.
Yeah.
You can use the transparent boxes.
No, it's
for
definitely
decades.
it's definitely not an issue of cost. It's an issue of having the ability to cheat, which is what's really important to the political parties in Taiwan. Because from the large parties to the small parties, it's my observation that there is no political party in Taiwan that's committed to transparent elections in Taiwan. It's just like it's kind of sad. Is that bad for me to say that?
No, it's it's that's what I'm about.
Yeah. Like personally, like I used to like be kind of supportive of smaller parties in Taiwan just because I thought maybe they would maybe care about.
I mean,
like,
we
they
used
weren't
to
as
have
corrupt as
those
some.
conversations in France 50 years ago.
Yeah.
And because it was so ridiculous, right?
What?
And to not have transparent ballots,
Okay.
boxes.
Yeah.
And of course, like I said before, we needed to have the technology, but it's not like today you cannot make transparent ballot boxes, right?
Yeah.
Okay?
Well,
In just a few days.
you know what would happen in Taiwan is let's say that like there's 1,000 voters in a voting station, right? So allegedly you would have to have 1,000 ballots for each candidate or something like that. But the problem is that there's like smaller candidates that, independent candidates or smaller parties, where they're probably like, why would you print 1,000? They would probably be too not willing to do that, But then it's kind of like, you'd have situations where people would go to vote and then there would be literally not enough ballots for your candidate, right? That would be like the easiest way to prevent. There's like, sorry, you can't vote for that candidate because we ran out of paper. We ran out of ballots for that candidate, right? And I think that like, yeah, it would definitely create more paper. And yeah, you're right, you can recycle it, but I think in Taiwan they would be against it. It's like, why not just have a blank piece of paper and you just stamp it? It's much easier, right? But then there becomes all these issues like, what's an invalid ballot? They have like a chart. I don't know if you see that. They have a chart of like 30 different use cases of stamps on ballots. They say this is valid, this is not invalid, and it gets very confusing because they keep changing them. They're like, well, what about 2 stamps? Does that count? Or like, what if they stamp the face? Well, that doesn't count. You have to stamp it in the box. So it creates more paper, but it's super straightforward. I mean, it's just like you literally don't have to do anything. You just have to put it inside an envelope. In Taiwan, I would think that you could just fold the ballot to make it see, right? I think it's great to have pre-printed ballots.
I think the French system is really good, okay? And it's impossible to cheat, okay? Impossible. I've attended many elections and I mean, this is from my experience.